This is the story of Enoch Burke, an Irish teacher who's dividing an entire country by standing up against something that many others are fighting for: they-them pronouns. A lot hangs in the balance in this debate, and we're going to break it all down here. Also, quick shout out to our new subscribers. Our last video went pretty viral, so if you're new here, welcome. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do it now. A teacher stands outside a school in the pouring rain. A court order says he shouldn't be there, but he refuses to leave. Cameras flash, reporters shout questions, and suddenly, it isn't just about one man. It's about identity and the very power of the law itself. But how do we get here? And how does a workplace dispute over pronouns spiral into a national legal debate? And more importantly, why does none of this seem to be ending? For Enoch Burke, this is more than just a job. According to him, it's about his right to live and teach in line with his religious beliefs. And for the courts, well, it's about something pretty big, proving that when the law gives an order, you have to follow it. So who's going to win? In this video, we'll find out. To understand the story, we need to go back to the beginning, before the protests, before the arrests, and before the legal chaos. This is the full story of Enoch Burke versus, well, Ireland. Before Enoch Burke became a national headline, he was a teacher at Wilson's Hospital School, a private Church of Ireland school in County Westmeath. By all accounts, he was highly opinionated, a devout Christian, never afraid to speak his mind. Burke wasn't just a teacher, he was part of a family known for their strong religious activism. His mother Martina had run as a Christian independent in elections. His siblings had also gained attention for their public challenges to progressive policies in Ireland. They were regarded as an extremely outspoken family of devout Christians.
In such circumstances, it's absolutely preposterous.
But no problem there, so far. At Wilson's Hospital School, Enoch was exactly the same.
And it's a disgrace even more so that it's going on now, that I am not back in my classroom.
He wasn't exactly known to stay quiet, especially when it came to his faith. And for years, that hadn't been a problem. But in 2022, something dramatically changed. A student who was transitioning asked to be addressed with they-them pronouns, a request that shouldn't be that controversial. The school agreed, following Ireland's progressive culture on gender recognition in education, and they circulated an email to make teachers aware of the students' preferred they-them pronouns. But Burke, well, he didn't just refuse, he exploded. In court, the former principal of Wilson's Hospital School, Niamh McShane, described an enraged Enoch Burke disrupting a school religious service by demanding she withdraw her request for teachers to support transgender students. Burke approached her after the service, standing so close and shouting that she could feel his spittle on her face. McShane clarified that she never asked teachers to accept transgenderism. Instead, she just requested support for a transitioning student to be addressed by using their preferred name and pronoun. She was embarrassed by Burke's public challenge during the service, and several students walked out. McShane considered this behaviour disrespectful and feared for the transitioning students' well-being. After reflecting on Burke's conduct, McShane deemed his actions gross misbehaviour and reported it to the school's board. Burke's refusal to accept the request to use the students' preferred pronouns had breached the school's ethos, and McShane believed disciplinary action, including possible dismissal, was necessary. But for Burke, it wasn't just a policy, it was a fundamental issue of his faith and belief system.
And all of this is simply because I won't accept transgenderism.
He believed that by using the students' preferred pronouns, he would be going against his religious convictions. At this point, the school had a decision to make. They could either force Burke to comply, risking an internal war with a teacher who had absolutely no intention of backing down, or they could just try and de-escalate it. So they chose the second option. The school put Burke on paid administrative leave, a standard move when an employee refuses to follow workplace policies. He wasn't fired and he wasn't punished. He was just asked to take a step back while the situation was assessed. For most people, that would be the end of it. Take the leave, negotiate, and come back. But for Enoch Burke, well, no. This was just the beginning of a storm he was willing to wage on his own. For the school, putting Enoch Burke on paid leave was meant to defuse the situation. It was just time away to prevent disruption in the classroom. But for Burke, this wasn't something he was just going to walk away from. On September 5th, 2022, the first day of the new school year, Enoch Burke showed up at Wilson's Hospital School as if nothing had happened. But something had happened. Burke had already been explicitly told not to return. The school had given him a clear order: stay away, let the process run its course. But Burke refused to leave. That morning, he sat down in an empty classroom waiting to teach. Staff asked him to leave, and he refused. The situation escalated. The school called the Gardaí, or the Irish police. But this wasn't a criminal matter yet. They couldn't remove him by force. So Burke stayed. Day after day, he kept coming back. And at this point, the school was running out of options. Burke wasn't just a teacher anymore. He had become a walking crisis. And to make matters worse, the media were starting to show up at the school gates, which meant this whole insane saga was being broadcast to the nation.
You're trespassing in such a manner as is likely to cause fear.
And so, with no other choice, Wilson's Hospital School took Enoch Burke to court. Their request was very simple, a formal injunction banning Enoch Burke from the school grounds. And on September 7th, the Irish High Court granted it. Burke was now legally barred from setting foot in Wilson's Hospital School. So now the stakes were much higher. Obey the court order or face legal consequences. And for most people, this would be the moment where the entire saga could have ended, but not Enoch. He was not prepared to stop. The day after the injunction was granted, Burke walked straight back onto the school grounds as if nothing had happened. For Wilson's Hospital School, the national embarrassment continued. The school was now on national news daily. Wilson's Hospital was becoming a circus thanks to all of this media storm. And Burke had now broken a court order. In the eyes of the law, that's a serious offence. And so, on the 12th of September 2022, Enoch Burke was arrested, a school teacher taken away in handcuffs, not for a violent crime, not for fraud or corruption, but for refusing to leave his workplace. The footage was surreal, and for his supporters, they felt that this was proof that religious freedom in Ireland is under attack. For his critics, it was proof that he was choosing martyrdom over common sense. Why not respect the wishes of the young student and the school? The majority of the country felt that the Burke family were religious fanatics. That fact was reflected in the national reporting and the judgments against them. But it really was starting to cause a chasm in society. His family, who were public supporters of his, took it a step further and turned the courts into a circus by shouting publicly and getting dragged down the streets for all sorts of unruly behaviour in the courtrooms. Burke was taken straight to Mountjoy Prison in Dublin. The court had ordered him to stay away, he had disobeyed, and that meant jail time for contempt of court. His detention wasn't about punishment, it was about forcing compliance through something called purging of his court order. Essentially, Burke could walk away at any moment. All he had to do was say, I'll obey the court order and I'll stay away from the school. That's it. No fines, no permanent record. Just acknowledge the authority of the court and he'd be released. A reasonable ask, but Burke is not a reasonable man. Burke wouldn't do it. He saw himself as a martyr of sorts, so he sat in the prison cell and he refused to give in. For him, it wasn't just about teaching anymore. It was about the fundamental right to live and teach according to a strict interpretation of the Christian faith. And while Burke saw himself as a man of principle, the court saw something very different. Burke was a direct challenge to the Irish legal system, and a threat to the strength of the legal system. They were getting embarrassed by him. And moreover, his family were causing a national storm. Because here's the problem. What happens if the courts let someone just ignore their orders? What happens if anyone can just refuse to comply and face no consequences? If Enoch Burke wasn't punished, it would set a dangerous precedent, one that could undermine the very power of the legal system. And so the courts doubled down. After weeks in prison, Burke was released, but with a massive catch. Every time he would set foot back on school property, the courts would hit him with daily fines, climbing higher and higher. And so did that stop him? Absolutely not. Despite everything, the arrest, the time behind bars, the mounting fines, Burke kept showing up. At this point, it wasn't just the courts trying to stop him. His own school had spent €500,000 trying to keep him out and get the issue resolved. But Burke was not backing down. This was war. By now, Enoch Burke had lost almost every legal battle. He had been arrested, he had spent time in prison, he was facing mounting daily fines, and yet he still wouldn't stop. Every time the courts ordered him to stay away, he just came back. Every time he was fined, he refused to pay. Wilson's Hospital School had locked the doors, but still Burke stood outside every morning, a teacher with no classroom, a protester with no sign, simply existing in defiance. At this point, the situation had gone beyond just Burke and the school, but others stood by him online, saying he was a hero for free speech and questioning trans rights. But really, why did they care? He was destroying his own life over a point of principle. Was it all really worth it? Burke had been officially dismissed from his position in the school, and the courts had upheld the decision. He was no longer a teacher at Wilson's Hospital. But he still refused to accept it, and the fines continued to pile up, reaching over €70,000. But Burke's family resisted. They began to publicise their own statements on YouTube. The videos amassed a big following with messages of support in the comments. So what started as one man's protest had now become an entire family's war against the Irish legal system. And even now it's still not over. Despite losing every appeal and being physically barred from the school, despite being ordered to stop, Enoch Burke keeps fighting. Why? Is this about justice or faith, or is it just stubbornness? One thing is clear, the battle isn't going to end anytime soon. So where is this debate now? Well, he's lost all of his court cases. He's been sent to prison 3 times so far, and in total he's spent 400 days in prison, and still he won't stop. Oh yeah, and also he owes almost €70,000 in fines. That's like $100,000, and he hasn't given up. So time will tell where this saga goes from here. And lost amongst all of the chaos and acrimony, Where are the wishes of the student in this debate? Surely, using they-them pronouns isn't such a big deal, especially for teenagers discovering themselves and who they are. And also, does it really matter that much? Respecting someone else's pronouns doesn't mean you support transgenderism, it just means you're respectful of others' life choices. But tell us what you think, let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, hit that like button and subscribe to stay tuned for more stories like this.